and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our TGT podcast, where I'm always joined weekly after a game by 2 or 3 or 4 or 7 fantastic guests on the show, and we've carried on that theme absolutely. An hour in the company of recording a fantastic show, which I'm going to take all the credit for, because I feel like if it weren't for me, it wouldn't be back. But I pestered him week upon week to bring the Arsenal Miami podcast back, or the 305 cast, and it is now. How are you doing, Johnny boy? I've muted you. That's my fault. That's my fault.
He didn't want to hear the retort to that. No, I'm going to give you the credit for that, because I don't know if I would have done it or when I would have done it had you guys not been doing, persistent. Let's use the word persistent. But look, it's great. It was a lot of fun. We had a great conversation. So I'm sure we'll talk about it after.
Yeah, of course. And you can make sure you go check it out when that's out, John. Give me a bell and I'll put it in the description and people can check it out. And second of all, I'm joined by the man that knows no bounds regarding tactics and analytics. It's Mr. Graham Brooks. How you doing, fella?
I think you jinxed me already there, Tom.
Yeah, you proved me wrong, mate. You proved me wrong. How are we?
I'll try to prove you wrong. Look, it's great to be back on again, and I think the last one I did with you guys, I think, was John. So it's nice to be back with John again. Thanks for the invite, mate.
No problem at all. What a way to kick off the show with 2 fantastic guests and a brand new member. Thank you ever so much, Glenn Cook, for joining up and joining us in the fun that we have over here. Of course, everything that you do helps support the channel. We've got some amazing stuff coming out. I'm going to keep saying on every single show. We've got new logos, websites, articles, the whole lot coming out for the start of next season. Actually, just before the FA Cup, we're going to go live with fingers crossed on most of those things. And all of the things that you members are doing are helping to fund that and giving us the support that we need. So thank you ever so much. Now, we're obviously here to talk about what was a momentous win against Manchester City. Graham, I don't want to go too much into the tactics just yet. I want to get your raw, emotional, just every feeling that was going through your body after that final whistle blew. How were you feeling?
I was on absolute high, mate. Absolute high, because I never saw that coming at all. To be absolutely honest with you. I think the last 7 times we played City, and the last time I think we beat them was the FA Cup semi-final of 2017. We've been absolutely spanked. And I think that they, on paper, possess better technical players than us. They're a long way ahead of us. They're one of the top teams in Europe. I sat down to watch that last night expecting to get beat. So I thought I'll just stick with this and just see how it goes. And I think I got pleasantly surprised as we grew into the game. It got better and better. And it was just fantastic. It was probably, in such a terrible season for us, this was something that we never expected, and it was a real highlight, a fantastic performance, and credit to Mikel Arteta for getting that out of the players, and for the players for delivering, which I thought was a perfect tactical coached performance. And I was on an absolute high. I didn't sleep much last night. You messaged me this morning, Tom, didn't you? But I hardly slept last night. I was on a high. You know what? You support your club for moments like this. We haven't won a trophy, but that was a fantastic performance, and it made my weekend.
I think it made everyone's weekend, it's fair to say, and in terms of an Arsenal perspective. United fans haven't had such a great weekend, which is nice. Always love to get one over them. I mean, John, we spent obviously an hour just now, and unfortunately we were in the situation where we were recording whilst the Chelsea United game is going on for a podcast that would go out afterwards, which is a podcaster's nightmare, as we know. But we were predicting most of the way through that it probably would be Chelsea, and it was. So thankfully, most of that content is saved. It's fair to say. It is. And we'll come on to that in a second and look ahead to obviously that final. But in terms of the actual sort of the game and the reaction, Graham talked there about how surprised he was with sort of what was offered up to us yesterday afternoon. But are there any sort of individual highlights that you can think of, instead of looking at it as an overall perspective? Right. What were sort of the more specific things that really surprised you about the day?
Okay. Well, I had an idea of what I was going to say until you said surprise me. I was going to say Aubameyang had an excellent performance, but we expect that from him, right? But in terms of surprise, and I don't know how much of it should be a surprise now. I thought David Luiz was absolutely fantastic, and even his post-match interview that he did was excellent. And the reason I say I was a little bit surprised by that was because, look, he's known to have this mentality, and a lot of people kind of use that as one of the reasons why, or at least a speculation as to one of the reasons why we re-signed him, because that kind of a mentality, being able to make a mistake, which is going to happen, and be able to bounce back and just do your thing and play. He did it after the World Cup when he played for Brazil and they lost to Germany. He's done it before when for us, and it's just a consistent for him. And you could point to that and say, look, it's an issue with his, he shouldn't be making the mistakes in the first place. But I don't know how realistic it is at this top level to never make any mistakes. Van Dijk made a mistake against the other game. Not comparing Luiz and Van Dijk. I'm just saying that mentality, that's a winning mentality and a top level winning mentality. And I could see maybe why they extended his contract based off of that. So in terms of impressive, kind of surprising performances, Luiz also Maitland-Niles. I thought he had an excellent game, and I'm sure Graham will get into the tactics a little bit about how he was deployed, which I thought was very clever and very effective.
Yeah, it was, and we definitely will do. Before we do that, let's jump into our chat box and get some reaction from you guys. There was a little bit of talk about how Man United plays. Arsenal Graham says Man U didn't even show up. Omar says United were battered. Carlita says we have to pay back the Chaz for knocking us out of the Europa League last season. Owen Young, one of our members, says Tierney's lung-busting runs forward in phases highlights the difference between parking the bus and what we actually did. I love that comment. That's really well. In terms of, I hate that term, parking the bus, and I get that there's elements of that. I suppose, Graham, let's kind of go on to the tactics of things and looking into how we actually won this game. The biggest criticism has been that Arsenal just did park the bus against this side, but can you argue the opposite and say that it was just way more than that?
I think the Liverpool performance was a luckier one in that basically we were pinned in for long periods and we were gifted the goals, you could argue, albeit from our pressing. But this wasn't a park in the bus performance. This was a tactical performance. And I think the three things that he did really well in this game, Arteta, was, I think, obviously coming from Manchester City, he would have been well aware the way that they like to use that right side, that inverted half space on their right side. And it was a bit of a masterstroke to play Maitland-Niles on that side against Mahrez. With Tierney behind him, he removed Kolasinac, put Tierney in the 3. Tierney has got the extra bit of pace and also is a better defender. But he principally put Maitland-Niles there because he's got the athleticism and he's very good one-on-one. He wasn't so good going forward in this game, but the one thing he did was, being a right footer, he basically matched Mahrez, kept him down to that one second half shot, which Martinez made a fine save. So he recognised the ability City have in that wide right side inverted space, and he put Maitland-Niles there. That was a tactical tweak, I thought, to actually nullify Mahrez, and it worked really well. But I thought the key to this game really was really Lacazette's role, Tom. I think that Lacazette, since he's come back recently, has not only been scoring goals, but playing an invaluable role for the team, which I think was highlighted in this game. What he asked Lacazette to do was, when Pepe and Aubameyang were pushing high, Lacazette was playing like a false 9. He was like dropping into the space. So if they beat the press, his job really was to nullify Gundogan. City sort of like to build up from the back with Gundogan, who's almost like dictates the tempo. And what he did really well, Lacazette, was if he wasn't pressing, he dropped back into that space in the middle third to deny Gundogan space to build their attacks, and that meant really a lot of the time that City went long, and then our back three dealt very well with their long balls. So I think that was a masterstroke, because Lacazette worked really hard for the team, and you could see areas where he's coached the team, the way we switched to play during games now. We switched to play really well. Lacazette for the goal. It was 10 players involved in that goal, Tom. 18 passes, I think, from our penalty box to when Pepe drifted it over to Aubameyang to score. That was a fantastic team goal. So Lacazette's role, I think, was good. And the other thing was, although Arteta hasn't got the players to play what I would call the high-pressing, counter-pressing game he wants to play yet, a possession, a dominant sort of type of football, he sort of adapts his tactics around the players he's got, basically to play on the counter-attack in this game. So we set up, it wasn't a park in the bus, it was to sort of like nullify their strengths, but use our own strengths going forward to the players we had. Whereas if you look at what Mourinho did last week for Tottenham against us, they literally parked the bus and literally just sort of like gave us the ball and just waited for us to make mistakes. We had 4 shots on target in this game there too. We created chances. Aubameyang had a chance in the first half, which had he took, it would have been 1 up before we scored. That was an easier chance. The second chance was a harder chance. I think we exposed the frailties. City in defence. Pepe, I think, got exposed Mendes sort of like defensive frailties. He's good going forward, not so good at getting back, and he sits off. It allows Pepe time on the ball. And I think they got a problem, City, in the middle of their defence. He recognised, I think, that whereas Laporte is a good defender, he recognised Garcia is probably not at the same level. So we basically sort of like put balls into the box, recognise that weakness. But we also recognised, I think, we trapped their runners really well, Tom. We sort of like got them playing the ball out wide a lot, recognising, I think, if they put crosses in, because they like to cut back a lot, and Xhaka and Ceballos never got ahead of the ball in this game. They were just sitting in front of the back three, sort of offering that shield, and they were both excellent. As John said, Luiz was the standout player. But we allowed them to put crosses into the box, Tom, knowing that they didn't have height in the box, so we could deal with it. So I thought tactically he got it absolutely right, but it wasn't a case of parking the bus. It was a counter-attacking. We used our counter-attacking speed of Pepe and Aubameyang, who were pushing high, to take advantage of when we got the ball. We had less of we only had 31% of the possession, but we made it count. And I don't think this was a park the bus. I think it was more park the bus against Liverpool, you could argue. But I thought we made the most of the strengths we had in this game. But he made those 3 tactical tweaks for me. That was Maitland-Niles on Mahrez. It was Lacazette filling the hole in the false 9 to stop their build-up play. And then it was the counter-attacking. And I saw Man United early in the season, Tom. I said this to you before we came on air. I watched Man United beat Man City early in the season with this style of football where you literally congest the middle, force them wide, and then be aware of their cutbacks and then break at pace. They had James and Rashford that day who did them. We had Pepe and Aubameyang. Yeah. And Aubameyang in this game, it's always crucial to get the first goal, don't get me wrong. But I thought that... it wasn't a part of us performance. We used what strengths he had. You've got to remember, if Arteta, I thought we saw in this game, the world knows about Mikel Arteta now. If ever a performance defined what he's done to this club, Tom, in a short space of time, this was it. It was a well-structured, technical, secure performance, and giving players belief to make the most of the skills they've got. And I thought you saw that on the pitch. It was a really... probably the best away performance. I can't remember a performance as good as this, probably since we won at Man City in the league under Wenger. But, so, yeah, I've gone on a bit. I'll let John go in, I think.
No, I think that you raised some really good points about, especially the latter point you made there. The away Manchester City performance is always sort of looked at Arsenal as a benchmark. And we've never kind of even matched it, let alone eclipsed that since we did it. And that performance, and in a way, this performance was different to that, because the game that we played when we won at Man City was more attacking. You had Santi Cazorla and Giroud combining, and there was a lot more free-flowing football and Arsenal-esque Wenger ball to that game, whereas this was a lot more disciplined, defensive, counter-attacking. And kind of one of the... Go on, Graham, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, this is a better Man City team than the one that we've seen better. So I think you could understand. I mean, player for player, they are more skillful for us. We kept Kevin De Bruyne quiet. We stopped Silva and De Bruyne getting in the pockets of space really well. And credit to Jonathan Ceballos, who literally was so disciplined in this game. I just want to sort of like add one point in before we move on to John. I mean, Robbie Savage.
If you just sleep for a second and then we'll come back. Go on, Graham. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Robbie Savage, when this draw was made a point. He said, "There's Man City got a bye to the final."
Yeah.
And if ever a player whose career was a whole bye, it was Robbie Savage. You know what I mean? Sort of like. So I wonder what he was thinking over the weekend. It's funny how lazy punditry, trying to be funny, comes back to bite you in the arse, isn't it? And and I think that Mikel Arteta, the whole football world knows now. A lot of people have been saying that he lost the dressing room at Brighton with the Guendouzi incident. A lot of people have been saying he's out of his depth. Tactically, he does, and he's still learning on the job, don't get me wrong. But this guy is a serious coach. Give him the tools. The club now need to recognise what they got in Arteta and need to seriously give him the tools. I'll let John come in now. I've said too much.
Yeah, John, I was going to pick up on a point that Graham said, talking about sort of especially the quality of this Man City side and the sort of the tactical way they approach the game. What Graham said about how we limited them to going down wide areas and the cutbacks, and as long as we covered those, we've kind of made them look very one-dimensional in a way for a team that've got so many creative talents. But what I want to pick up on is that, do you think that Pep Guardiola was arguably a little bit egotistical in the way that he chose his lineup? Because he went with Kevin De Bruyne and Gundogan playing at the base of this sort of midfield six, which included Jesus, which when you look at it, when you're playing against a side like Arsenal, yes, you need creativity. Yes, because you're going to need to break them down. But in these games, Arsenal don't typically offer too much offensively. In fact, we create very little chances usually in these games. So do you think we were so effective on the break because of the egotistical team selection by Pep Guardiola to not select more defensive-minded players like, say, Rodri to cover that back line and stop these very dangerous counterattacks?
I think it's a good question. I don't think that really played into it as much. I think when you're looking at what was the biggest factor in how we ended up getting a result from this game, it's not so much that what did Pep do or didn't do. It was what did Arsenal do well, and I think that Graham did an excellent job at highlighting a lot of that. One thing I'd like to add to kind of to his points was one thing that I noticed that we did, and that Arteta kind of talks about a lot as important tactically is being able to take players out of the game, especially defenders, when we're in the build-up play. And we saw that a lot, where you would wait for one of the attacking players that were performing a press to commit, and then you would pass the ball, effectively taking them out of the game. So really, it was more so what we were doing positively than what Pep should have done or shouldn't have done. I don't think Pep approached this game in a way that I think he approached it in the right way. Let me put it that way. And I think that it was just a situation where we just outplayed them. And I know that that's what's so great about this win, right? It wasn't a case of, hey, Arsenal got lucky or Arsenal, whatever. Fortunate. Yeah, or fortunate, right? It was, no, we just outplayed them, and Arteta just simply pepped. Yeah. And I think that's what really makes this win so wonderful. I think not only was it a FA Cup semifinal, not only was it against a team that we've historically done poor against, not only did it come off the back of also winning against Liverpool, but it was a comprehensive performance. It was a comprehensive performance not only from players that you haven't really seen the pitch as much, like in Maitland-Niles, to players that see the pitch every single week, like Xhaka. From every single player on that pitch, they were doing clearly what Arteta set out. It was obvious what the game plan was, which, like it or not, we have not, I don't know how you like it, but have not been able to do for a long time under Arteta, or under Arsenal, rather. Under Arteta, it's clear what we're doing, is my point. And look, could there have been selections that Pep made that could have helped out? Sure, I guess. But that's kind of like, we have the benefit of hindsight, right? So when you're looking at how he should have set up that team, I don't anticipate that he sets it up much differently 9 out of 10 times going into that game, right? So to answer your question, yeah, I think that could there have been some things that would have helped him in this game? Possibly, but I don't think that's why they didn't win.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree on most of the points. There's part of me that still wants to believe that Pep was kind of, I don't want to use the word arrogant, but was overconfident in his team selection in a way. And I think that ultimately that did go against him in certain aspects of the game. We're not going to spend too much longer on the game because we've talked about it loads on the channel over the last day or so. But Graham, I want to get your thoughts on sort of now thinking about the players that were playing in that lineup. We've talked about the improvement of David Luiz, of Mustafi, how Ainsley Maitland-Niles played, how Danny Ceballos has been improving, Xhaka has been improving. The end goal for Arteta for me, I think, is John's given up with the flag. The end goal for me, and I think Arteta wants, is not to play with this back three, is to eventually go to a back four. Because if you look at the most successful sides across Europe, besides arguably Juventus, these teams play with a back four to add more creativity and flair to their attacking line and their midfield. How do you think Arteta is going to tackle the situation of trying to get defenders like David Luiz and Mustafi comfortable with playing in a back four, or is it just simple as they're going to need replacing if Arteta wants to move to a back four?
I think I think what he's done is with the back three, he's recognised the strengths of the group of players. So Luiz plays better in a back three. So he's and Luiz's numbers yesterday, Tom, just to give him, I know we want to move on from the game, but just quickly, Luiz's stats against Man City yesterday: 100% aerial duels won, 100% tackles won, 69% pass accuracy, 11 clearances, 4 interceptions, 1 through ball. The ball he played through for Aubameyang in the first half. This was redemption for David Luiz from the performance when he got sent off at first game after the restart. So, but look, what he's done is with these players, he's put them in the positions in the pitch that make them feel comfortable in the formation where allows them to play to the best of their ability. Luiz is best in the back three. Xhaka is best with protection behind him in small spaces, right? I think that the wing backs are good. Bellerin and Tierney, particularly, are good as wing backs. So he's put those players in this formation 3-4-3. I think it's more 3-4-1-2 yesterday at times, but this is the formation to suit these group of players. Now I know that he does not want to play this system, right? But this is the system that suits the group of players he's got. I think he wants to move to a back four. I think he'd rather play a 4-3-3, which is what all top clubs in Europe play now. But he's not going to be able to do it with this personnel. And that's my view. I don't think David Luiz can play in a 2. He was brilliant yesterday, absolutely brilliant. But I think he's better in a 3. Mustafi, and I have to say, I thought that was a penalty when Mustafi slid in on Sterling.
No one agreed with me.
But Mustafi was excellent. But it's only a week ago at Tottenham where Mustafi was awful as the wide centre half in a 3. And Kolasinac was awful as on the other side in a 3. So I think he wants to go to a back 4. Can these players have a career at Arsenal? I think he'll look to replace them. I think Luiz will probably play out the last year of his contract. He's got Saliba coming in. I think he wants another centre half, and I think he'll want to go to a back 4. I think Tierney can play left back. And then we got Suarez and Bellerin who can play right back. I think he wants so the only players I think are expendable at the moment, looking at who he leaves out the squad all the time at the moment, are Ozil and Socrates. I think their race is run at Arsenal. The other players who I thought were like Mustafi, Maitland-Niles, Luiz, Xhaka, I thought these players, he might be looking to move on. I'm making cases not to be moved on. And all the time they're delivering on the pitch, he will keep faith with them, Tom. But ultimately, I don't think they suit the system he wants to play. And I think that's why I think we will see if he wants a Thomas Partey type figure. I don't think we can get Partey, but we want someone like that at the base of his midfield. And I think he wants a commanding centre back, and I think he wants sort of attacking players who've got pace in wide areas. And I think he wants to play that system. So he's not going to play it with this group of players. So until he gets those group of players, Tom, I think he's going to find the system that suits this group of players until he can get the replacements in. So I don't think you can make. You can't. He's made Mustafi and Luiz look a lot better in the system. But I think if you went to a flat back 4, I don't think Mustafi and Luiz would fill me with much confidence, to be honest.
Joe McGool says Luiz needs to prove himself against Chelsea now. He also got red carded in that game. David, please show Chelsea they made a mistake by selling you. Peter Rennes is a fantastic comment. What do we think of Sterling's challenge on Mustafi? I don't think he thinks it was a penalty. I genuinely did. At the time, I was like, my God, we've got away with one there. I really thought that we'd sort of blown it.
It's about time we got away with one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is about time. It is about time. But I think that you raise a good point about about ruthlessness ultimately is that we can praise these guys and give David Luiz a 10 out of 10. Mustafi was great, and Bellerin was great in the second half. But ultimately, in the long term, you need to be ruthless if you want to improve. Big teams do not just sit on their laurels and keep the players in place after a few good games. They go out and they sign top quality players that suit what the manager and coach wants them to do. But the next sort of phase of that is then sitting and praying that he gets the backing from the higher ups that are the only people that can give him that. So that's a whole different discussion, which I am going to come on to in a bit. But before we do, let's keep it to FA Cup and look ahead, John, because now we do know. We do know who we're playing.
We certainly
are playing Chelsea. What's your initial reaction to that? Are you happier that it's Chelsea? And if so, why?
All right, so I'm happy that United lost, first and foremost. Anytime United lost and United fans are not happy, that's always a positive, right?
Yeah, I don't see that Mancunian account in here today. He's usually popping about somewhere, but I don't see him today.
He's crying somewhere, I think. So look, and that's always good, right? So we could be happy about that at least. In terms of what team I'd actually rather play, I think that both of those sides could give us some trouble. I think that there's kind of a romantic aspect of having a United Arsenal final historically. But then again, it's kind of going to be a London derby in a way. So that there's something to be said about that as well. In terms of the quality of both teams, I think that on form right now, United was a scarier bet. And I think that Chelsea definitely has some issues, especially in their defense. But there's just so much of like a narrative filled fun time that could be had with this Chelsea one, considering we beat them in the last FA Cup final. They beat us in the Europa League final. Their lead striker right now is our former striker, and who scored against us in the last final. There's a lot of narratives in there that is going to make this an exciting game, which I'm really looking forward to. And I think where we are psychologically as a club in terms of what Arteta has been able to get and what the manager has been able to get out of these players is been remarkable. I think we're coming at this from a totally different perspective that we did the last final that we were at, obviously when Emery took us to the Europa League final. So I think we're in a good position right now to be playing in a cup final. Touch wood, obviously, but I couldn't really ask for a better set group of momentum. I couldn't ask for more momentum going into a final than we've had now. We just beat Liverpool. We just beat Man City. The confidence level of these players have to be immense right now. That could all change when we play in the league, but I think that we're going to be focusing on this cup final. And I think that while there is some certain aspects of the Chelsea side that are dangerous, I think that there are areas that Arteta can exploit, particularly in Chelsea's defense. And I think that it wasn't by any means a comprehensive victory today, even though the scoreline says 3-1 against United. I think that if United had more of an opportunity against them, because I was watching a bunch of the highlights from what I saw, and while we were doing my podcast, I was checking them out. It didn't seem like they were bothered too much by it. Now, obviously, that comes from not having the entire game viewed from start to finish, but I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling good, which is weird and a little concerning as an Arsenal fan. Anytime I feel any kind of overconfidence or any confidence at all, that sometimes tends to end poorly. But I'm going to keep it positive because, listen, we beat Liverpool, we beat City. Both of those teams are better than this Chelsea side. It's a cup final, so ostensibly anything can happen, but we have to put ourselves in the best position to get a result. And I don't think that we're anywhere but the best possible position to get a result from this game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think that when you look at what we've just sort of got past, this is a team that is not, in terms of quality across the pitch, in terms of squad depth, at that level.
Right.
Now, Graham, that poses a different question, because we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier on, but I want to come back to it in that we've approached the last two games very defensively and playing on the counter-attack. We're coming up against a side now in Chelsea that are not of the level that Manchester City or Liverpool are, and are much closer to us in terms of ability, in terms of team strength, I feel. So how do you think that Arsenal need to, or Arteta specifically, needs to approach this game, and how different did the tactics need to be to come out with a win?
I don't see him changing the shape in terms of the formation. I think that he's going to go with that. I think if you look at Chelsea, Chelsea have not great defensively this season, to be fair. When we played them at the Emirates, I thought we dominated them in the first half, only had the one goal. And then the second half, they literally, we then sat off them and allowed them to play, albeit they needed a Leno mistake to equalise and they nicked the game. Then, of course, at Stamford Bridge, we got Luis sent off early and it changed. It was a difficult game there. So in terms of how we're going to play them, I think we're going to need a bit more in our central midfield. I think Chelsea have got the strength of Chelsea is in their midfield, Tom. I think that they haven't got a lot of goals in their midfield, but they've got a lot of good midfielders. And I don't know if Kante's going to be fit for this final. But they have got a very solid midfield, and Mason Mount is good in the half spaces. I don't think they've got they don't score a massive amount of goals. They create a lot of chances without taking them, and they give up chances. So they've conceded a lot of goals. So, but I think that what we're going to need in this game, I think we're going to need more drive from midfield. I think it'll need a tweak in tactic because when they sit very compact. And I think you're going to need somebody to drive from midfield to take their players out of shape. They have got a lot of pace at the back in recoveries. If they play Rudiger, for example, is very fast. I think I'm not going to second guess how Arteta is going to set that up because I think he's not going to change the team around too much. I just think we probably won't sit so deep. I want to see us push up more and possibly try and break the press and get through their midfield to get at their back four and use the pace of Pepe and Aubameyang. Lacazette probably trying to draw centre half out to create the space, but we're going to need somebody really to sort of like create. The only worries I've got is that there isn't a lot of creativity in our midfield in terms of big chances created. If you look at the midfielders we got, so that's going to be a problem. But I think it'll be a tactical game. I think the Chelsea final, we've beaten them in 2 cup finals, haven't we? I just wish we had someone like the Ramsey, a third man running midfielder who can basically sort of arrive late in the box to create, cause them problems. We haven't got that, of course. No. But I think we're going to need something from our midfield more than we got, really, Tom. I don't know how he's going to address it yet, what he's going to do. I mean, Joe Willock, somebody like that who basically offers energy and drive from midfield. That is possibly could come into the running for this game. But I think we're going to need something more in midfield to open them up, to be honest. And I don't think we can sit. It'll be a totally different game to Liverpool Man City, because I think we will have more of the ball against Chelsea. And it's what we do with it. Obviously, against Tottenham, we had a lot of the ball. We waved a lot of pretty triangles and shapes across the pitch, but we couldn't open them up. And they are very well defensively organised, Chelsea, in front of their back four. It's just I think they do concede when their defenders are put under pressure. It's almost like we've got to find a way to put their defence under pressure. And I think we're going to have a bit of drive from midfield, and that's the challenge for Arteta in this game. Yeah,
it's a big challenge to try and tactically basically work out how we change and how we combat a different side. Because we were talking to John on John's podcast a second ago, and I was saying about how it's been different under Arteta recently because Arsenal haven't looked at the opposition. We've sort of just played our game and we've done what we know we can do as a collective and do well, which is sit with the low block, as we were talking about off air, hit on the counter, and ultimately, more recently, take the chances when they present themselves too. So, John, what I kind of want to ask you is, looking at the next 2 games being Watford and Aston Villa, which I think is the other way around in terms of chronological order of games. Do you think these are now, because for me, the league is, I think we needed Leicester to get a result today against Spurs if we had any sort of hope of overtaking them. Yeah. Do you think these 2 games now present themselves as opportunities to experiment? Or do you think they're 2 games in which this system of the 5 at the back needs to be maintained in order to keep the momentum up ahead of the cup final?
I think it's going to be used for experimentation. And I think that we're going to, I mean, these are sides that are, especially Watford battling relegation here. There's been issues with the manager. So look, I think Arteta is going to use this to experiment. It maybe rest certain key players and not give them the full amount. I think momentum's important. So they're not going to go in this from a purely experimental perspective where they're just going to try whatever they can, right? They're going to still go in, I think, to win this game and keep the performances up. But it's kind of difficult to experiment, right? Because the quality levels that we're going to face versus Chelsea in the final versus what we're going to be facing in these against Villa and against Watford in league are leaps and bounds different. So it's a qualitative difference between those two sides. At the same time, though, experimentation isn't just about how are we going to use our formation to win a game or how we're going to use it against Chelsea. It's also looking at the interplay between certain players and seeing how well they play off each other and their kind of mentality in terms of being able to go certain places on the pitch and effectuate a certain plan that Arteta has. And I think that's kind of the experimentation I'm talking about. Not necessarily like a formation or a tactic, but kind of seeing how players react. The more information is always better. And when you have a manager like Arteta, he's looking at all these little things as extremely relevant in determining how he's going to approach the next game or any particular challenge. That's just how tacticians and people who are strategically oriented, that's how they act. More information, more data is always better for them. Wenger was notorious about that, and you could argue whether he was a tactician or not, but he certainly loved data, and that was extremely important for his decision making. And I think that you could say a lot of things about him, but the argument that more information is better is absolutely a truism. And I think that that's what we're going to see. And that's what I think is going to be important for Arteta, not necessarily the results of these matches, but what can he glean from how his players are reacting on the pitch? What are they doing positively? What are they doing negatively? How are they training for those? It's going to be an opportunity for them, I think, because I don't think that let me rephrase that. I think it's going to be difficult for them to get as pumped up for this game as these upcoming Premier League games are as they would for this cup final. I think that's pretty obvious. So it's going to be a test for Arteta to keep that mentality going through these games, which might not be as valuable to them, and to illustrate to them the importance of still keeping momentum going forward while at the same time gearing towards a more important fixture in the cup final with Chelsea. So it'll be really interesting to see who ends up getting the start in these next couple games in the Premier League leading up to our final. I think that it's going to be very interesting. I don't think he's going to be full force on these games. Let me put it this way: I'd be very surprised if he went full force like he would against Chelsea in a final.
I think that there's a couple of points about, and there was one raised in the chat box about the money that comes from obviously finishing in certain positions in the table. I think there's like £2 or £3 million worth of difference between each position depending on where you finish. So if say you drop 2 places, that could be £6 million that you lose out in terms of finances, which is important, but you will get a lot more money for obviously qualifying for the Europa League and playing in that competition. So then it's a gamble. Which route do you go for? Graham, let's get your thoughts on it. How do you sort of approach these 2 final games of the season? Do you look to rest players and experiment like John says, or do you think it's important to keep momentum up and keep the same sort of players playing that you expect to field during the final?
I think he's got to find the balance, Tom, between the two, really. I think obviously you look at players, how they're recovering from games, whether they need more recovery time or they're fit to go. But I think we saw before, if you look back to the end, I think we need to learn the lesson from the end of last year under Emery. Emery put all his eggs in the Europa League basket and started resting players, didn't he, at the back end of last season against Brighton and Crystal Palace. And we lost momentum right at the end of the season and then went into the Europa League final having lost that momentum. I think momentum is a big thing in football. If you look at Man United, players get set playing in a system, playing week in, week out. And if people have recovered, and bearing in mind, I know they're playing every 3 days at the moment, so basically it's all about warm downs, recoveries, and getting ready for the next game more than tactics. They would have drilled the tactics on the pitch prior to the restart. Well, I think it's all about momentum. You saw with Solskjaer's team tonight. He made a few tweaks tonight, didn't he, in that semi-final against Chelsea, and it totally disrupted the team. So, and So I think it is important, to keep the momentum and to keep the players playing, as many as you can, playing in the same system. So to keep it going, if they're fit enough and they're well enough to play and they're fit enough to play them. And I think last year we went into that final against Chelsea and lost momentum in the league, and then just literally capitulated in the final. So I think it is important I want to end the season well. Then Aston Villa away and Norwich. Those two teams, we got to respect the Premier League. Those two teams, it's Watford, isn't it? Not Norwich. It's Aston Villa and Watford. We've got to respect the league. Those two teams are fighting for their survival. They respect the league as well, which I want to see. But I want to see players. You could argue he could give some players will be thinking, you know what? There's a cup final spot up for grabs here. If I can put in a good performance, so one or two might get the opportunity. But I would like, in the main, to keep pretty much same sort of side. Get players continuing the good habits in these last two games going into that final. So I would, I know me and John slightly disagree there. I respect John's view, but I would personally want to keep as close to that 11 that he's wants to finish the season with. Keep everybody sharp, ready for that final.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just to kind of touch on that, I don't think we disagree as much as you think. I think that there definitely needs to be a balance between experimentation and kind of getting a sense of where we are and where the players are physically as well as mentally, as well as the need for momentum, which absolutely 100% agree is extremely important when you're going forward. That being said, it works both ways. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to momentum, because in the same situation where you can actually gain momentum by winning, if something were to happen, let's say a red card or something that you can't expect, or just a bad performance, which will happen, it also has that negative effect of, if we don't win one of those games and we're actually trying, it could potentially deflate the side. So it is absolutely a balance, and he needs to weigh out those factors as well when you're considering how he's going to actually approach this strategically. I think that also needs to be weighed into consideration, what the deleterious effect of potentially losing one of those games are, especially given the fact that they're in a relegation scrap and they're lower. We also want to avoid a situation where we don't play well against those. And I think when you do experiment, you can avoid that, and you can add a positive benefit to the side by being able to tinker and being able to maybe get some players just in case they need to come on the pitch later in that cup final game. They've already been starting against the side like Aston Villa or Watford. But I agree. Ultimately, it's totally a balance. So I think you're 100% right.
Yeah, and the other thing, just before you come back in, Tom, is somebody start looking at Chelsea and thinking, if I want a certain player to play in a certain style in that match, and the way Chelsea play, you might look at an opposition and think, I could test that out in one of these games. You might consider that. I think there's the way Chelsea play out. If Kante's fit, obviously you look at the way they play out, and you want a high press and try, but you need to think of what you're going to do if they beat the press. And then they like to go into midfield with those strong midfielders. You want to be, you want to have, I think, physical athletes, and so that's where I think someone like Maitland-Niles again comes into the equation again. He's a versatile sort of player, isn't he? He could easily sort of, like, his physicality, his athleticism mean that he could be in a running for this final in some way, to compete against those Chelsea players. So I think he's got to think about how Chelsea play in that final, getting the team in the groove ready for that final without giving too much away, Tom. But and I agree with John. You do worry about losing players, but you always could get an injury. That's just bad luck, isn't it? And you just hope that doesn't happen, or someone does something silly and gets sent off. But I think we have to, go into this final in the right frame of mind, the right confidence. This manager is giving the players, I think, the coaching to carry out on the pitch. You've seen that. They look coached, Tom, on that pitch. And you saw that again on Saturday night. And that's the biggest change from Emery. The players have got their belief back, and they want to play for this manager. And I think that's a credit to what he's done at the football club.
Yeah, I think it's a good summary. And I think we were talking about that a lot in terms of the the direction that things have changed and how things have improved, and how he's improving players that we genuinely thought would be on saving at some stages. So it's amazing how things have turned around. We go into our final section of the show where, of course, we turn to you guys in the chat box for questions. Now, I do have to remind Graham and John, we want to get through as many of these as possible. So let's try and keep these answers as streamlined and as rapid as a Nicola Pepe counter-attack. So Avon Teddington says, what's our take on Arteta's comments about being back? This is for you, Graham. Do we think he's worried that the club isn't going to invest in the way he wants to take the squad forward, or that the club won't invest at all?
Yes, he is concerned. He said so himself. He is concerned and he's worried. So yes, the answer is he is worried. He's not going to get backed.
Do you think that, just to extend it a tiny bit, do you think that it will have any impact at all that he has said anything publicly?
I think I love the way he's sort of like put that out there. He's literally, he's not frightened of the board, is he? He's come out and said it. And I think every time he gets a good performance, like he's done out of the team this week, his stock rises when he says something like that. He's proven that with the tool, give him the right tools. He's shown with not the right tools that he can deliver on the football pitch. There's only mistakes that have cost him in various games. So in answer to the question, he's challenging them, isn't he? He's challenging them. The problem we got is, I think you have to recognise is where football is at the moment with COVID, and also, what money is going to be available for all football clubs. So and that's a worry. I think that. And we have to recognise that Kroenkes haven't got a history of putting their money in their pockets, have they? But he's challenging Raul, Snurley and Edu. He's challenging them. So, yes, he's saying he's concerned, isn't he? Because he must be. To say he come out and said it in the week after the Liverpool game.
Yeah, a manager's not going to say that if they've been given assurances is probably the best way to put it. Cutter Stage asked what the tactics are going to be against Chelsea. I think we kind of covered that with the chat just beforehand. So, John, a question from Nico F. He says, who do you think is Arteta's main target signing this summer?
I mean, that's a difficult one to even kind of figure out, especially considering, I would imagine it depends on who leaves, right? So if a player like Aubameyang, God forbid, leaves, then it's going to need to, maybe we need to find a goal scorer, because all of a sudden now most of our goals are gone. Look, I think that we can always use a more defensive presence in the midfield. I think that that's something that no matter who comes or goes is something that's going to be extremely important for us. With Saliba coming in, I think there's a little bit of a question mark on what we do with defense. You might argue that we should look for an upgrade on someone like Mustafi. But in terms of an actual person, I don't know if I can put a name down as to who he would want, because I think it's a fluid situation that's changing depending on who's leaving. And really, I would imagine, just to kind of generally and maybe not as satisfactorily as you want answer that question, it's going to be a player that's going to benefit the side and that fits the style play that he's going to want going forward, which is going to be a possession-based kind of game with an eye towards attacking play.
Do you know what? I actually think his number one transfer target this summer is going to be Dani Ceballos.
I think that's an important one. I think it's very important.
Getting into a permanent deal, I genuinely think that has shot up the priorities for this summer for sure. Keeping with the transfer theme, Graham, Shumoy Jeffrey says, realistically, who are your ins and outs when the window begins? Let's try and keep it to 3 of each if we can.
I think Socrates will be gone. I think he would like to offload Ozil, but I think Ozil has got the last year of his contract. I think Socrates and Ozil are not part of his plans. So that's 2. I think he wants a physical DM. Partey has been that link's too strong not to be anything in there.
Yeah.
Sometimes a good signing is keeping, as you said, Ceballos. So just quickly, I think Socrates, Ozil will be the 2 I think he'd be looking to ship out if he could. I think
Guendouzi?
And Guendouzi, of course, yeah, Guendouzi. I think he said already about non-negotiables, attitude and commitment are essential. Mm-hmm. So you're right. Yeah, thanks for that, for prompting. Yeah, Guendouzi, Socrates, Ozil, the 3 out, 3 in, Partey, a centre half, and I would like to see us getting another attacking midfielder. I don't know. You know more about who we're linked to than me, Tom. You do all your transfer shows and that. You've got your knowledge of Europe. Who's out there?
Well, I've been pushing the Dominic Joboslai movement for a good year now. So, I'd happily sign him. I'd be looking to get in another centre-back, as you say. I mean, Upamecano is the one that a lot of people want. I doubt he's the one that we'd be able to get. There are other centre-backs out there. I like Pau Torres at Villarreal as a young Spanish guy. He's got a lot of potential. I think it's the age profile that we should be looking at. If you want to find someone that's financially viable, Malang Sarr is available on a free after leaving Nice. That's a really good option. So there are players out there that we could definitely target. Question from SH342474, which is someone's phone number, so if you want to give it a ring, says, will Chelsea making top 4 put us in the Europa League regardless? The answer to that is no. If a team that wins the FA Cup is already in the top 4, 7th spot in the league suddenly becomes a Europa League spot, which is more frustrating why Man City's ban was over. Because had they have not been banned, it would have been 8th spot as well that would have got Europa League. But because of that, it only goes down to 7 unless we, of course, win it. But there's also a funny thing that if we finish outside the top 7, and if Spurs finish 7th and we win the FA Cup, Spurs would have no European football next season because you can only have 7 teams, I believe, in both European competitions across the Europa and the Champions League. So that'd be quite funny, wouldn't it, if we managed to pull that one off? Jason says, next breakthrough star next year. Who am I on, John? Am I on you? I think I am.
Yeah.
Next breakthrough star, who are you going for? Patino, Balogun, and Harry Clark. I don't know too much about the other two.
Me either. I don't think it's going to be Balogun, considering he's probably not going to be here, if you believe the reports. I don't really know about a breakthrough star. Maybe Willock, just because he's going to get a fresh start. And
starters.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to, we're starting to see him break into the first team a lot more. He just got a new contract, so he's here. It's just an opportunity, whether he takes the opportunities that he has. I think he's a talented player. So I'm going to go with Willock. Just out of those. Obviously, we've already seen Saka. We've already seen Martinelli kind of make those breakthroughs. Maybe
Tom,
Saliba.
I'll tell you one, Tom. I'll quickly throw into the mix. Smith Rowe.
Yeah. He just helped.
He's got a great opportunity, isn't he? I talked about that midfielder, attacking midfielder. He saw his goal at Huddersfield. He's impressing them, and I think that he could be the breakout star next year. You come back, maybe that's somebody Arteta could work with. Smith Rowe.
I think that's a big shout. It's great. I have to say, Jason, it's great that you're actually looking into the youth players. It's something that I need to do more of.
Yeah, I was going to say I haven't seen enough.
Yeah, I need to look into it more. I think during the summer we're going to do some tactical breakdowns during the off period on some of the youngsters and the players that have been out on loan, like Mavropanos. Even though I know he's not going to be here next season, but I'll say Tutu has been at Bochum and done really well, apparently at right back and right wing for them. So that's going to be interesting to look at some of them. El Neni, we can probably expect will move on, but we can have a look at him anyway and see what happens. But yeah, there's some interesting players both coming through the youth setup and youngsters that are out on loan. Emil Smith-Rowe is a big shout. I think he could definitely do something. Brad Richardson says, do you think there's any legs in the Coutinho Guendouzi? I'm just going to draw a line of that and say I do not want that to happen categorically. I think Guendouzi is one of the players that offers us the most in terms of value that we could get for a player, and to exchange that for someone in Coutinho that would be a massive risk, massive wages, and has been arguably declining over the last couple of years of his game, I think is a risk that would put you back into another Ozil situation. And I don't really want that. And I think we're well stocked also in the positions that Coutinho occupies, which is mainly left wing and as attacking midfield as well. And it would stunt the growth of players like Martinelli, Emil Smith-Rowe that we just talked about. So if we're going to sign someone,
Reece Nelson.
Yeah, another one. Graham Kitchener says, do you think we need to go after a right back, or do you think we can put faith in Bellerin and Cedric?
I think we do. I think we can put faith in Bellerin and Cedric, and also Maitland-Niles can play there as well. So yeah, I'm quite happy with the right.
You're happy with Bellerin? Like you wouldn't?
I'm happy with Bellerin. I think Bellerin's been okay. I think he's been, he's come back of his injury. I think he's getting better. Obviously, that pass across the back four Saturday night, sort of like I nearly fell out of my seat. I think I'm happy with Bellerin and Cedric and Maitland-Niles as well. I think I'm happy with right backs, and I'm happy on the left side with Tierney.
Yeah, definitely.
And fantastic. Yeah, I think that Kolasinac's one. I'll have one too. We need to offload. We said earlier, Kolasinac. We need to get rid of him.
Yes, 100%. And he was a free deal, so it's going to be profit no matter what we turn. And he's on big wage. I think he's on something like 90 grand a week.
Big wages. Yeah, big wages.
100 grand a week, so that's a big one. We had a super chat coming from Beats Box Dre, who says Arsenal becoming a cup team now. We love the FA Cup. 10th is not good enough, but I like the process of Arteta. Any of you worried by this? Back Mikel. I think that ultimately, and we talked a lot about this, John, on your show, about sort of the hope and the light at the end of the tunnel. So if you want to get more info about that, when it's out, it'll be a link in the description, and obviously I'll be tweeting it out as well, so make sure you do go check out. There's a question from Peter Renner that I promised I was going to ask, and I'm going to try and find it. Whilst I do that, let's ask this one that's just popped up on my screen. Joe McGould says, how far do you think we could go with Arteta and backing from the board with some solid signings? Could we challenge again in the next few years?
How far? I mean, look, the right signings can take a team from 10th to challenging for the league, right? A couple players can revolutionize a side. Look at what Van Dijk and Salah have done with Liverpool. I kind of don't like to hang my hat on that, just because it's usually the exception rather than the rule. And even then, it takes a little bit of time for them to develop and get everything moving and everyone on the same page. So I think the question of when are we going to start challenging again is I don't want to say it's a dangerous question, but it's really, I think we need to set our goals more realistically. Like, when can we challenge for the top 4 maybe? And I think that we're a couple signings away from very easily challenging for that top 4 throughout the course of a Premier League season. So yes, I think that absolutely a couple signings can change the dynamics of a team to the point where you become a challenger. I wouldn't hang my hat on that right now. I don't think that the board is going to spend the money necessary for that to happen. Like, if you bring in, this is ridiculous, but Mbappe and Messi, right? All of a sudden, it's hard to say that team doesn't challenge for the league. It's not going to happen. So we have to be realistic about what to expect and what we can do in certain windows.
Peter Renner, I found your question, mate. He says, it's an interesting one, Graham. He says, what do you guys think of the officials in England? Chelsea committed 21 fouls tonight and got 0 bookings. I wonder how many of ours would have been booked or even sent off. It's an interesting one, talking about like the officials, because I thought that this season it's been taken to a new low with the introduction of VAR as well. So what's sort of your opinions on officiating at the moment?
It's just very poor, isn't it? It's very poor. I mean, the game is very fast.
There we go. That's all we need.
we don't have referees officiating in the big national tournaments, and that's the reason why. None of our officials are good enough.
It's as simple as that, really. It really is as simple as the fact that, I mean, when you have John Moss with Mossy put into his boots, it goes to show the mentality of
or what's his face, who got the Champions League tattooed on him after.
Clattenburg.
Yeah, we haven't seen him for a while, by the way. So
he retired because he had so much money, I think.
Yeah. When it becomes about the refs, it's totally sorry. I didn't mean to jump onto your question, but when I saw that Mossy on his shoe, I was like, "Are you get out of here with that? Are you kidding me?"
Just one point I'll add, Tom. I think VAR is making them even worse, and that is that they are frightened now to referee games. I think that they're just now happy for it to go to VAR.
But even VAR's getting it wrong, though. VAR is making decisions wrong as well.
And it's just not applied consistently. So VAR is
but the reason why VAR's not working is because VAR doesn't. It's a ridiculous scenario where the referee is frightened to make the decision, and then VAR doesn't really want to overrule the referee if he has made a decision. It's almost like a clicky club. They don't want to. They don't want to humiliate the referee on the pitch. I know they talk about obvious and clear errors, but I just think they need to get this VAR better. It's a right idea, but it's not been operated in the right way. But I think referees have to start refereeing games properly, instead of sort of like ducking decisions. And you are right that there are certain teams who commit fouls and get away with it. And I think, I don't know why that is. I don't know why. But I just think the officiating in this country has just been going downhill for a long time, and it's reached a new low this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We had a super chat come in, which I'm going to answer very quickly before we ask the final question to both of you, and then we're going to go. Unknown drill assistant Tottenham's day is cancelled, but if they finish 7th and we win the FA Cup, we obviously get Europa. Graham, do you want Europa very quickly? Is that something that you want, or would you rather us stay out of it?
No, I want it for the money.
Fair enough. You can't blame a man for wanting some money. So there you go. Last question to both of you, just from me, is an interesting point to come up on my phone that was retweeted by David Ornstein from Zonal Marking, which I can't remember the guy's name who is Zonal Marking, but I will try and find it soon. Michael Cox, that's his name. He's written an article basically talking about how Arsenal's playing out from the back, the areas of where it went wrong, the areas when it went right, and why an empty stadium has helped with Arsenal's confidence of playing out from the back. So to both of you, how much... I'll go to John. I'll go to you first, mate. How do you think this not having a stadium has actually genuinely helped the players' mentality? Because you know how quickly fans can get on the back of these guys, especially at the Emirates, and the tension that it creates and the unnervingness. Oh, that's not a word, but you know what I mean. Of sort of how it puts these players under pressure. Do you think not having a crowd in the stadium has genuinely helped this sort of transition into Project Restart of Arteta?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely helped. And it's kind of weird to think about, but it's just an added pressure that's not there anymore, right? You're not playing in front of tens of thousands of people where you can actively see all of your moves being scrutinized, and you could feel this kind of collective tension and uncertainty in certain situations, right? That's gone. That can only help them. Or only hurt them when that's mounting on them. I do get that we lose some of it in the sense that maybe if we're down and out, your team can really push, the fans can really push a player to go forward. But when you're dealing with a restart, the chances are it's not going to be more positives than negatives. It's going to either be neutral or probably more on the negative side. To be able to play through that without the added pressure of a live audience, I think is extremely important and has benefited us.
Graham?
I agree with John 100%, Tom. He just nailed it there perfectly. I think that, you've sat in the Emirates like I have, and you see how when we start trying to play out for the back, the crowd all around you, how they react to that.
What are you doing? Kick it!
People just like the ball hoof long, don't they? So, but they don't like the stress. But overall, I think John nailed it perfectly.
Yeah, I think he did as well. I think that it's a clear factor, and whilst as a spectacle, it is sad, and not having fans in the stadium. And I know that any fan that would have been in the ground would have been elated, and the scenes of beating Manchester City at Wembley would have been unreal. But maybe it's a worthy sacrifice if it sends us through to an FA Cup and arguably winning it as well. But hopefully, fingers crossed, things do get much better and people can return to the grounds, and that is going to be our final sort of comment on the show and the game. And the final thing I should say before I do wrap up is get a prediction from you two for the final, but in case that we do not see you before then. So John, give me a scoreline for the FA Cup final against Chelsea, please.
3-0 Arsenal.
Wow. You see how
that.
If I'd have said to you against Brighton after we'd lost that game, we're going to be in the final. Believe me. I know you don't believe me right now because we just lost to Brighton, but we're going to be in the final. Imagine what you would have predicted.
Probably the opposite.
Yeah. Who knew? Graham.
It's going to be tight, Tom. It'll be a tight game.
Not 3-0.
I'm going to go 2-1 Arsenal.
Okay, that was going to be mine, and I'm changing the TGT prediction because I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles has become, or as better known, Mainsley has become a bit of a cult hero on the show. And I think he deserves a little bit of TGT love, and so I'm going to go for a 2-1 with Mainsley to score the winner in that game. I'm going to be I'm actually away when the final is, but I'm going to be obviously watching it, and I'm going to be doing the show from outside of the usual surroundings straight after. So it'll be interesting. Let's get some of your thoughts in the chat box. Tivo Pesco is going to be 2-1 Arsenal. A Louise free kick to win it. Wow, that would be similar celebration to what we saw in the World Cup for
Giroud
Brazil.
own goal to win it.
Oh, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Back to the topics. Says 4-1 Arsenal. Owen Young says 1-0 Cedric. Don't even care if he's cup tied. He's scoring. Brilliant stuff. So there's clear positivity, which is nice. I'm loving the fact that people are positive about this now. I'm loving how the things have changed. John, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on and speaking to you for 2 hours of my afternoon today. It really has been enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on again. It was good talking to Graham again. I know that last time he was on here, we were talking. It's always a good conversation.
Cheers, John.
Awesome stuff. Speaking of which, thank you, Graham, for coming on. Where can people find you and what you're up to?
It's Graham B195, my Twitter handle, Tom. I'm not up to much at the moment, but it's great, a pleasure to be on, and a privilege to be part of the chat with you and John tonight. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Are you doing same old Arsenal tomorrow? Is that happening?
I am doing same old Arsenal tomorrow. I mean, I've got big work commitments, as you know, so I struggle to get these podcasts in. That's why I don't. When you offer
weeks,
I do struggle to come on. So, but I was talking to you a few weeks ago that ultimately in the next year or so, there might be an opportunity for me to do some more work in this area. So, because obviously I'm coming to the end of my working life in my career, so I will probably have more leisure time. So I'll probably be pestering you for some advice, mate. So, but no, look, I've really enjoyed the chat. It's always great and really enjoy being with John. I think this is a nice little trio we got here. So when I come on again, it'll have to be with John.
I'll write that down. Noted. John, sorry, I didn't give you a chance to plug. So tell people where you're at and what you're up to, fella.
I am at 305 Cast, the Arsenal Miami podcast, which we do, and we get a bunch of great guests. And I don't think you've been on. I have to get you on the podcast sometime.
No, you just DM me, mate, and we'll arrange it.
Perfect. And obviously, everyone in the chat or listening right now, Tom and I just had an excellent conversation on the podcast as well. Like he said, he'll put it up in the link, and I'm sure he'll retweet it later. So it's good stuff. Come on and listen. We have a good time.
Yeah,
100%.
Really, really enjoyable show earlier on. So make sure you go check it out as soon as it's up. It will be in the description of the show, and of course, we will be retweeting out from @the Gooner Talk TV. So make sure you follow us over there. Thank you, live chat. You have been amazing as always. Massively appreciate you always tuning in. Over 400 of you have been tuning in live today, which is amazing. Really appreciate you spending the time of your Sunday evening before you head back to work next week. Well, I'm not, because I'm off now for 6 weeks, but I've earned that. Enjoy yourselves. But I'll be making sure whilst I am off to be pushing out as much content as feasibly possible for all of you. So we'll see you again very soon. Subscribe, like, hit that notification bell. But as always, up the Arsenal.